Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining our session today. This is Chris at Inflow Communications, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to spend at least 30 minutes with us today. Today's topic is a topic I discuss with clients on a regular basis, and today we're going to be covering Genesys Cloud reporting, but more specifically, we're going to talk about participant data and the role participant data can play in advancing your analytics. Say that again. All right, to keep your eyes open for what's coming soon. As you know, with Inflow, we have an ongoing webinar series, and on February 2nd, join us for Genesys Cloud Log Gathering. We'll give you a quick how-to gather logs and why you might need to gather logs. And then on February 9th, we are going to have with ShoreTel, MyTel, why virtualize for SIP. Both sessions are at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so stay tuned for those. And later in our presentation, I'm going to actually give you an update on two presentations that I'm going to be doing relative to participant data and a product, or at least two products that you might find interesting for helping you advance your analytics against Genesys Cloud. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into today. Our agenda for today will give you a brief overview of who is Inflow Communications, and then we'll get right into our topic at hand, which is Genesys Cloud reporting. I'm going to be covering the basics, and then we'll get into the real deep dive detail. We'll go through everything regarding participant data, how it's used, who uses it, and hopefully give you some examples that you can take away today to get you thinking about how data might impact your organization. Most specifically, we'll also be covering third-party reporting solutions because once you have this critical data, accessing it and massaging it for other purposes, there are tools out there that make it very elegant and easy. And of course, that depends on what your environment might include, but the tools that I'm going to be presenting or showing today or highlighting are tools that I appreciate for their ease of use and flexibility. And lastly, we'll finish up with a summary and Q&A. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Riccio with Inflow Communications, and sharing today with me is Luis Sauceda. We've been here with Inflow for many years and have lots of experience, and Luis will act as our moderator today, and I will see if there are questions periodically through the presentation. So Luis, if you'd like to say good morning or hello, now is your chance.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Hope everyone enjoys today's webinar.
Thanks, Luis. He's always a great help for me in getting these things organized and keeping me on the right path. So for those of you that are here that do not know Inflow Communications, who is Inflow Communications? We have 11 plus years focused on the contact center and unified communication solutions. We don't attempt to be everything to everyone. We're solely focused on unified communications, but more specifically contact center and contact center solutions. We have 50 plus employees. We're headquartered in Portland, Oregon, but we are 100% remote employees and work staff, and almost everyone is in the field. We have and support over 260,000 seats and endpoints with over 800 customers supported nationwide, many of those that have an international footprint. If I can talk anything about Inflow Communications, what sets us apart and different is that we are focused on speed, urgency, and agility at every level of working with clients, whether it's at the C level all the way down to the technicians. Many of us jump in to assist clients, and I see that as an ongoing practice, and that's what makes us different. We're really dedicated to our craft. And we have full lifecycle guides to both unified communications, contact center, and customer experience space. And we focus on that solely with the industry changing rapidly. Everyone's changing to customer engagement, customer experience, and that's where we hang our hat. Now, just to give you a view of some of our clients and what our customer profile is, we look for clients and we love to partner with customers and clients that have mission critical or see their communications as mission critical to their operation. We also work with strategic decision makers in those organizations who value partnership, and we have a very strong foothold in the mid-market and enterprise space. Off to the right there, you have some names that you probably recognize, Zillow being one of them, Domino's, Enterprise Fleet Management, just to name a few. If you're into engagement rings, then Blue Nile may be something you are familiar with, and also ServPro. Skipping forward, these are some of the partners and technologies that we partner with. We are a platinum partner with MyTel, a gold partner with Genesys, a preferred partner with RingCentral, just to name a few, and this is a collection of the products that we do support. So let's get into today's topic. as we go through the topic today, I will stop to see if there are questions to make sure that everyone is along for the ride. And at the end of our presentation, I'll give you our contact information should you have questions after the fact. But let's get into today's topic, which is Genesis Cloud reporting. Now, I'm going to cover the basics just to kind of give us a mindset in terms of where we come from with regards to data and contact center, but then we're going to dovetail right into participant data and how that benefits the business. So with that being said, for those of you that of us that have been in contact center for many years, contact center reporting has largely been the same throughout history, and it's usually used to measure performance from multiple levels. And most contact center operations always report these critical pieces of information: total interactions per hour, per day, per week, per month. It's not unexpected in that regard. Average wait time, average interaction time, average handle time, and service level performance, to name a few. Now, there's quite a bit more that is reported, but this is just giving us a sort of a view into contact center reporting, what most people look at from contact center reporting perspective. And when we're looking at contact center data, the data that's associated with the interaction most always includes caller ID. Sometimes you'll get a customer name. It may include the DNIS or the entry point, the number the client dialed to get to you. The agent in the contact center may see that information as well. Almost always includes the queue destination or name, the group destination. Sometimes it'll include the skill, date of interaction, time of interaction, and of course the interaction length. So these are common data points that we're probably everyone on this call is used to seeing and we expect to report on. That goes without saying. However, over the last several years, data has been increasingly more important, not only to the contact center, but extending the data outside the contact center into the business and reaching out into BI applications. Most organizations we work with have analysts that do lots of number crunching where they marry the contact center data with more business facing data. So this is an important aspect to understand when it comes to Genesys Cloud. And when we talk about Genesys Cloud and your ability to extend beyond the traditional KPIs, which we just mentioned, or data points, participant data becomes extremely valuable. So what is participant data? Participant data is or are custom attributes that you might attach to an interaction. To make it simple and to kind of demystify it, think of participant data as additional labels to the conversation. As I mentioned, you might see date and time of a conversation, but every time a customer contacts you, you know you're looking up specific information about your client. And this is where participant data can be a tremendous advantage for extending analytics. It allows us to embed additional data outside the traditional KPIs or information into our data payload, which lets us extend our reporting. It allows the operation the ability to selectively append data. So what I mean by that is that when we're looking at client-facing information, we may not want to see all the customer data in that interaction because we know that information such as name, address, phone number, account information is largely contained in a CRM. However, but for reporting purposes, we may need to see an account type or perhaps a ticket ID or a patient ID into the contact information so that we have another way to pull and sort data. And so can change how you look at data by allowing you to append that information with strategic details. And we're going to talk about some examples later on the presentation, but just let's think about participant data as your ability to customize and label specific data. And when the data is applied strategically, it offers your analysts and BI folks an almost endless way in which to slice data, visualize data, marry data together for custom reporting. And ultimately, it provides every business operation a very unique way to tailor the data they need to see for their own purposes. And when I think about contact center reporting and the need for data, no two operations are alike. You have healthcare providers, we have tech support providers, we have business services, and so each vertical, independent of itself, is very unique in what sort of data it might need to seize for reporting purposes. So this is where participant data allows us to customize and be strategic for many purposes. And more businesses, because of this accessibility to data or the need for data, are reaching far beyond the contact center for reporting purposes. We'll get into that in just a moment, but clients, if anything, these days want more data, not less, and there is a very unique way to do that, and that's with participant data. Now, when we think about analytics and data, we look at various applications, and many clients today, has become part of their regular processes internally, is to leverage BI tools, business intelligent tools. Tools such as Microsoft Power BI or Tableau, Looker, or Domo. These are tools that are designed to allow it to ingest data and manipulate data and create very customized reporting scenarios. And it's not uncommon these days that every contact center needs to have the ability to export the data into a BI tool because they have a full-time analyst doing many other things with that data aside from just looking at contact center metrics. When you look at expanded analytics and BI tools that clients are using and how they're massaging data, they're starting to calculate things such as costs per hour or a marketing response rate or the contacts per transaction. How many times have we had to have contact with the customer to complete a transaction? You can define transaction in whichever way makes sense in your organization, whether it's setting an appointment, following up on a ticket, placing an order, those types of things. Also, clients are very interested in seeing the contacts per account. When many businesses are really seeking to maintain their customer loyalty, what becomes critical is their outreach programs, maintaining contact and loyalty with the client. In other words, keeping pulse on how often we reach out to client, because a forgotten client will most likely stray and go to another service provider. We're seeing that the business wants to see things such as conversion rates and first call resolution. Now, here's an interesting thing about first call resolution. Most of us know first call resolution as a metric that's used in the contact center. And what isn't easily explained is how do we get to first call resolution? We usually have to tie a pivotal data point to better understand whether or not we're hitting our goals for first call resolution. The idea behind first call resolution is to satisfy the customer in one phone call, but this is where having the ability to look at a ticket identifier, for example, to see how many calls or contacts, points of contact, did it require the organization or the customer to reach out to this client related to this ticket to satisfy the needs. And so it gives us a much richer way to get to first call resolution. So I put this up in expanded analytics because it is something that's critical for a lot of organizations. So let's talk about participant data in Genesys Cloud and how we would update participant data and why. So most of the time we're looking to update this data in real time, but in some cases it may be static. So let's take a look here. With Genesys Cloud, you have options for updating information in real time, and it can be a varied process. The very first process is through Architect. Architect is the call flow builder or the interaction flow process. Whether you have a call, an email, a text message, these can all be subjected to updating participant data. And so I often use Architect to either hard code the participant data or dynamically update the participant data. Now, one of the ways I might hard code the data is if I have a dedicated phone number assigned specifically to a client, and that's more specific with BPOs, that type of operation. Or I just may want to use it for marketing purposes. If I have a number dedicated to this marketing initiative, I want to hard code the data for the resource code related to the marketing campaign. But more often than not, clients are going to update this data dynamically, which in my opinion is the most flexible and best way to update data. Now in Genesys Cloud, you have the web services plugin, which I love. If you haven't played with that yet, take a look at it. It's very easy to manipulate, but we can use a web service to update information based on identifying client details. So the classic example is this. Your customer calls in or sends an email. We look at their phone number or email address and we go look up in our database information about the client. Maybe one of the things we look up about the client is the client type. a VIP client versus a platinum client. And we'll use that information to flag participant data so that we can run performance metrics against VIP clients as opposed to platinum clients, as opposed to just generic contact center reporting. So a web service is often used to update things on the fly, which is the most dynamic way to update things. Now, also in Genesys, you have the concept of the agent desktop scripting. Now, with the agent desktop scripting, I use triggered events to update the participant data. I want my representative to navigate through the conversation. Maybe I'm collecting data along the way and I want to update that information to participant data. There's just several ways that you might look at updating information for whatever purposes, but I've listed 3 ways that you can update information in Genesys Cloud using the built-in tools. Now, this is more of a detailed view of each option. So here on the left, we have a classic view of a flow process inside Genesys Cloud. The big blue arrow on the left where it says set participant data. What I'm specifically doing here, you'll notice that the second widget in my dropdown, which is labeled 373, Web Services SQL Get Account Info. From here, once I get account info, I get to the success branch of my tree there, and I set my participant data. I'm specifically appending the record to say client account data equals this piece of information coming back from that database query. Now, in my case here, I'm doing the account number, and then right below that, you can see where it says item number 673, set participant data, which is client balance data. Now on the right-hand side of my screen with the blue arrow on the top, that's a closer view of what I'm actually doing there, just to give you a kind of taking that out of the view there. And then on the right, at the bottom, on the right-hand side where it says participant name, this is where I give it a value. You can see item number 1 says my attribute name. You can give it any name you want. And then the value you assign are the data variables that you want to assign. In my case, I'm grabbing the return data from my CRM and assigning account number. So this makes it completely dynamic because we're always going to use the response data from the CRM. Now, the second way you might update this data is through a Genesys Web Services call. Now here, the blue arrow on the left, I'm actually pointing to my URL where I'm stuffing some information. I'm actually making an update to attributes in the participant details of the conversation. And then down below on the left, I'm actually inserting as attributes an incident ID and a client ID. This is a closer view here. In my example, while it's an incident ID and a client ID, this is specific to one of our healthcare clients who happens to be a BPO style operation. You may enter something such as client type and ticket. Anything becomes fair game to be updated, but this is a close-up view of that query to send the update. The third the position that I spoke about where you would update information would be the agent desktop scripting. Now this is an example of an agent desktop script which does a screen pop when the interaction comes into Genesys Cloud. Here on the left where you see the blue arrow, I'm pointing to the client information -A, which has the name, a phone number, a client account, and additional information. What I would normally do here is I would either grab the information by some triggered event, either by a representative selecting one of the buttons I have there, and push that data in the background using the web service we just saw to push information. Now, it's not always required that the agent have to maneuver through the screen. We can simply respond to data. If the account is past due, update this information. If it's a VIP client, update this information. You can be as dynamic as you wish, but the agent desktop scripting gives us a lot more flexible ways in which to update participant data. And here's an example of a conversation that was updated with very specific account information or participant data. You'll see at the top here, we put the client account data here, and the account number is 987654. We put the client balance data here, which is $6,478.12. The client ID is XYZ Urgent Care, and then the incident ID is 1232456. Now that information would have never existed inside the Genesys Cloud reporting unless we insert it. But the value to the customer here in using data this way means that they can parse their data and reporting to be very specific for their customer. So who uses participant data? I'm going to give you some best options for use and give you some quick scenarios into different use cases. So in my mind, every operation can benefit from the use of participant data. Let's talk about BPOs. A BPO who typically runs things by clients or project may want to update information specific to their client or project. It's not uncommon to handle multiple projects for a client, and being able to report the performance by each segment can be a critical aspect of running the business and reporting back to your client who is interested in contact center data, but more importantly, they may be interested in looking at project performance as an independent piece. So BPOs factor very well for using participant data. Marketing is another team and process that can benefit from extended use of participant data. Marketing teams usually want to track activity by lead source or track by ad initiative. Maybe they're trying to penetrate an ad in New York City into that market versus Las Vegas, and they need to track the response. Even though the response comes to the same phone number, they may want to track it by something other than that. They also use it for lead tracking and conversions. What's my conversion rate of any sort of marketing initiative in a specific space? In my examples, New York or Las Vegas, it could be really anywhere. Marketing benefits from this greatly because they usually need to see a different piece of the pie than just general contact center data. They're more interested in the outcomes and not interested in the details. Details as it pertains to a contact center hold time, things like that. Contact center in general want to use things and expanded data for first call resolution. Participant data can help collate information in a much easier way when applied correctly or when applied strategically. You can also use participant data to route and prioritize interactions by client. Here's what I say about the contact center in general. Not only can you update the record with participant data, but I can use that participant data to make a routing decision. So if I'm updating participant data and I pull back from the CRM that's a VIP client, I can immediately use that data to say, hey, I'm going to classify VIP clients at a higher priority than bronze clients or silver clients. So it gives you another way to use data to really make the experience dynamic from the contact center perspective. Another popular way is service ticket tracking, resolution tracking, contacts per ticket resolution. That's a big one. No, understanding what types of tickets or service requests need what type of activity. And what happens to most folks is they tend to take an umbrella approach to satisfying tickets and operations. And in many cases, the approach needs to be slightly different based on the need. Here's an example. For contact center, a general inquiry to an order status should be straightforward and simplified, but a complaint about an order is quite different. So using the same uh, framework for reporting, this could give you insight into the ways in which handle time is impacted by the type of interaction or need. So contacts per ticket resolution, and then be able to drill down further to ticket type. And then lastly, account management is another example, engagement tracking. Going back to my suggestion earlier that it's not enough to win clients, but to keep track of how often we reach out to clients. We want to keep clients engaged to us, attached to us, and create that loyalty experience. Propensity to buy is another one that people don't think about. Let's say you track your clients and you see that Mary Jones calls in on a regular basis, but over 75% of the time we're able to upsell her as she's calling to buy something. This might be a way for you to give that sort of interaction treatment, or if you know things about that client, you can give them either different upsell opportunities or special percentage off discounts, things of that nature. The other one is communication preference. If we see that a certain client prefers to respond to text versus a phone call versus an email, we can adjust our customer engagement strategies accordingly so that when we're sending a text blast or an SMS blast, that we're only reaching out to clients that prefer that sort of communication method versus someone that would prefer email marketing or a phone call. So this just gives you a high level view of how you can use participant data to slice and dice not only reporting but strategic operational input on the floor. So now let's talk about reporting and parsing data. But before I jump in here, Luis, do we have any questions at this time?
No, Chris, we don't.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So let's get into reporting and parsing. Obviously, when you start adding and injecting other information outside the realm of contact center, even though it's contact center related, we need to find a way to expose the data. So thankfully in Genesys Cloud, in the analytics view, in your drop down under performance tab at the top, you do have the ability to look at interactions. And on the right-hand side, you have the ability to export those interactions. And when you export the interactions, you can flag it to also include participant or custom attributes. And the custom attributes is the participant data. When you export the data, now you will get it in this format, which is not my most favorite format, if I'm being really honest. But if you look in the data there, right about the third row down, you'll see where it says client account data 987654. The data is there. So you can pull this information, you can parse it in Excel, or you can import it into one of the BI tools I mentioned earlier. And as I said, this isn't my favorite way to do it, but there is an element of manual processing here. But the data is there and ready for you to use, and Genesys expects you to use the information. Now, I always take the approach of if I can do it easier with the product, I'd rather do it that way if it streamlines my time commitment. So here are three out of the box options for Genesys Cloud, and more specifically, they expose the participant data. So Success KPI is a tool that allows you to ingest the API information and create specific reports around participant data among a slew of other items. Bright Metrics, equally capable of showing participant data on a per interaction basis. So if I were to run a report, I could run a report that says, give me all my calls for yesterday and then group it by my participant data, which is my ticket ID. And so right away, you can see things grouped in logical sequence so you can get right to the matter and see all of Mary Jones' calls related to ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Pure Insights is also one of my favorite tools. It has an advanced BI process that for what it does, it's largely drag and drop and really easy to consume. So check out one of these three options in terms of leveraging participant data and expanding your analytics. If anything else, your BI team will appreciate it. And this actually puts sort of BI processing in the hands of the contact center. In some cases, I do work with contact center folks where the supervisor is running more strategic reports. And so these tools are really geared towards that sort of mindset, whereas the other BI tools I mentioned really are for analysts, et cetera. But these days, contact center is becoming a mini analyst as well. So let's get into our summary and Genesys Cloud participant data and the topics that we've covered. So it moves the operation beyond contact center metrics. Participant data takes us outside the realm of traditional contact center data, which is call time, call length, those things. It lets us augment the data to great strategic advantage so we get a better way to look at data and slice and parse our data. It also provides for a unique and custom reporting. Most of the time in contact center, you have some flat metrics, but when you go into healthcare versus finance versus marketing, they have a completely different slant on how they need to use data. And participant data allows them to customize the field and the naming convention and the output of data that's important to their unique operation. And it expands BI options. Most of the time when you're looking at BI, someone is pulling in the information from contact center and having to back into it by marrying CRM data and two other data resources. Since you're doing an account lookup already when your client calls in, put in the key relative value, typically an account ID or something specific, maybe in finance or a credit unit might be member ID, into that, and it sort of makes the BI process easier because that's your join mechanism. Go find all my records here and marry it to the other side, which could be loan processing, things of that nature. And if you're interested in taking a look at a couple of these products in more detail, I do have a couple of webinars coming up. On March 23rd, we're going to be looking at Genesys Cloud participant data using Bright Metrics, and I will have Bright Metrics with us for that session. On March 25th, I'll be doing the same thing, but this time with Pure Insights, so that you can take a look at how Pure Insights leverages it and also looking at their BI process. And all this will be geared towards leveraging and extracting participant data. With that said, are there any questions that we can address now, Luis?
No, nothing yet.
Great. Thanks so much. And if you do have questions, I realize that this topic can be fairly dense for the non-technical person or the non-analyst or someone who's not really into data. If you have questions, feel free to reach out at the following toll-free number or send an email to contact@inflowcommunications.com. Louisa will funnel those to me. No charge for the discussion. I have these discussions on a regular basis, and I tend to be an open book with helping clients and non-clients alike. Sometimes just getting through it is helpful enough. That being said, thank you so much for joining us today for 30 minutes. I'll get you back on your day and enjoy the rest of your week.